Our next guest, Mr. William Walter.
I'm Hutch.
Hutch, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Jesse, nice to meet you.
Yeah, you can call me Steve.
Steve, okay.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to swear?
We
How
are
open are we being here? Okay.
We're as open as you want to be.
Okay, I like to hear that.
pretty R-rated, I would suppose. Tell me about yourself. What's up? What brings you here?
So I am running for the 24th Assembly District of Wisconsin, about 20 minutes northwest of here. Y'all are politically engaged, so I'm sure you're familiar with the WOW counties. Quite famously, the Red Wall of Wisconsin, Waukesha, Ozaukee, Washington.
They say, the way that WOW goes, the way Wisconsin goes.
Yep.
I'm repeating what she said. I don't remember. I don't know what Wisconsin.
No, I mean, that's accurate.
That's good.
It's the WOW counties versus Dane and Milwaukee. Whoever has bigger turnout is going to determine the state. Now, that's kind of shifted recently, actually. Democrats, I believe, have won 17 of the last 20 or 21 statewide elections. But we are arguably the definitive 50-50 purple state in the country. So for me personally, it's really exciting to get involved as a young person because young people, we're often mislabeled as naive or ignorant, and that's just horseshit, right? Young people today are so much more intuitive than they've been in the past. We have all of human history at the touch of our fingers. We have access to information that our parents and grandparents could have never dreamed of. Now, recognizing when that information is or is not
I was going to say, because
problematic.
I've seen a lot of Zoomers fall for some insane stuff too. So.
Yep, no, it certainly happens. It goes back to in the late 90s, early 2000s when you're sitting on your computer in computer lab class getting basic education on internet understanding that some of these individuals perhaps missed that course. But at the end of the day, we are the future, not just of the country, but of the world. We're the present in a lot of ways. Gen Z and millennials are the largest voting demographic in the country, right? We just don't vote like it. Well, boomers are consistently at the polls, day in, day out, election after election after election. So
Gen X is very Trumpy as well.
Yeah, and every time somebody points that out online, I have to share the famous graph with the lead level exposure because I'm not going to make it. Perhaps it's just a coincidence, perhaps not, but. The young generations in particular, we know what kind of world we want to see going forward. We just have to implement it. And to be able to execute, you have to get elected officials who see the world through a similar perspective.
So I'm really curious to know if you experienced at the state level a vibe shift after Biden dropped out and Kamala took the momentum that she had and actually turned it into a lead. Did you guys notice your own campaigns changing or the energy level at the state level as well?
Energy level at the state level certainly changed. We actually drove past the high school where Kamala held her first event post-Biden dropping out. It's about 7-8 minutes away from here.
That was here?
Yeah, that was right in Wisconsin. Yeah.
Okay.
It was an electric atmosphere. Absolutely, I hate to say the energy was palpable because that's what I was telling my friends while I was there, and then I saw every media outlet say using the same terminology.
No, but we were watching that stream live on the stream, and the energy
was different.
Yeah, it was great.
It was straight up different. Now I was still a child during Obama's first run, so I wasn't as engaged as I may be now, but. It reminded me of Bernie in 2016, and to offer some context as to the shirt as well. My day gig, I'm the executive director of our Wisconsin Revolution, which is the Wisconsin offshoot of Bernie's organization at the national level. Now we are independent because Wisconsin has very unique beliefs that are different than what Bernie's platform at the national level might highlight. But we are still based on those same core tenets, Medicare for all, Green New Deal, criminal justice reform, getting big money out of politics, all that kind of stuff. And that has shaped my worldview as to how I'm trying to approach my race. So to answer your second question, the energy in my campaign did not shift post-Kamala because I'm doing the same thing I've done before.
Right.
My job is to really try to inspire another generation of voters in a community that might not be favorable necessarily, at least right now, to our beliefs. But the demographics are changing rapidly, very, very quickly. Younger families are moving into some of these suburban communities. Retirees and empty nesters, maybe they're going down south, maybe they're leaving, whatever it may or may not be. The red wall of Wisconsin is going to fall in the next couple of cycles. Perhaps not this year, but give it 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. We're building something cool here. The infrastructure is going to be in place, and I hope that the next young candidate after me is able to take advantage of it.
So when you speak to young voters, because I interact with a lot of Zoomers online and on my stream, and what I've noticed is that a lot of them want these big sweeping programs right now. Mm-hmm. When a more pragmatic approach to something like Medicare for all, I mean, we may be talking about a 10 or a 15-year project.
It's a process.
I'm wondering, like, what sort of what do you sort of tell young people that want these things right now and are very upset that they're not getting them right now?
Well, let's speak to Wisconsin specifically. So my two biggest issues for my campaign personally is women's reproductive freedom, bodily autonomy under the same umbrella,
Yeah.
And the expansion of badger care. Wisconsin is one of 10 states that has not accepted federal ACA expansion. That is a very simple stepping stone. Get more people access to affordable insurance that kind of lays the foundation for whatever this transformative next step may or may be down the line.
Well, Bernie himself said that the ACA was the
Yeah.
reason why he was able to thrust a conversation like Medicare for All into the mainstream.
Exactly. No, you're exactly right. None of this happens overnight. I could throw 10,000 cliches at you. Rome wasn't built in a day or something, right?
Yeah.
This is a process. You have to lay the groundwork. You have to build an organizational structure, whether it's young people, whether it's just constituents in your district at large. These individuals have to rally around these causes and make it very clear, both at the ballot box and with their public personas, what they're posting online, when they're contacting their elected officials, that this is what they believe in. It's an inside-out strategy with the party, right? You got to be utilizing public pressure as well as electing officials who are more aligned with this potential future.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to tell them that, yes, you're right. You have to be pragmatic. You have to recognize that we're not going to wake up tomorrow and all of a sudden we're going to live in a brand new United States where a fairy tale utopia where all of these brilliant new transformative policies have been enacted overnight. That's just not how the world works.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can't even start that process unless you get officials into office who are at least open to the idea. You look at Michigan and Minnesota in particular, what they've been able to do with 1 to 2 vote majorities
Right.
now.
Yeah.
They've changed the entire game.
Mm-hmm.
That could be Wisconsin with our fresh new maps this cycle. Perhaps it's 2 more years until 2026 that we're able to do that. But once we do, and you're able to offer these victories and you're able to show people the tangible improvements you can offer to their day-to-day life,
Yeah.
I mean, we could monopolize a generation of voters.
Sure. Yeah, there is a fair bit of triage, I think, that needs to happen in the Trump era. And it's not that you can't push the party or try to push the party this way on this issue or that issue. But one thing I try to instill on my audience and the people that I engage with is if we let Republicans win these seats, then we're talking about stripping rights.
We're going backwards.
And now, for the next 5-10 years, energy that you could have spent on a stronger shift to renewable, or energy you could have spent on expanding our healthcare access in this country, healthcare subsidies. Now you got to expend time, resources, manpower, money on clawing back reproductive rights. And so I think, to me, it's just, I feel like Trump has been a very clarifying force.
It's the crank analogy, right? Every time they crank it 1 or 2 more.
They call that
steps
the
to
ratchet effect.
The ratchet
right?
effect, yeah. Every time you ratchet 1 or 2 more time to the right, we have to fight all that way back just to get to where we were at the beginning.
Have you encountered a lot of resistance with young people to this idea of slow, foundational, incremental change, or have you found success in convincing them? If so, how?
I wouldn't say resistance because that implies that they perhaps are not satisfied. Frustration, maybe disappointment, but when you sit down and say to them realistically, perhaps this is a 20, 25-year-old individual. They were born post 9/11. The amount that the world has changed since then, the amount the world has changed in the last 10 years alone, monumental. But if you had pointed that out at the time, it would have felt like, oh, that's insurmountable. We can't do all those kind of things in that long. I mean, you look at even 10 years ago, gay marriage was a fringe or radical or extreme issue, and now they're trying to phrase some of these other, I'll call them very popular progressive policies as fringe or radical or extreme. But if we plant the seed today, it might not bloom tomorrow, but in the back of their mind, people have this idea now ready to go, and when the right messenger is able to present it properly, who knows what we can accomplish.
Yeah. Got any thoughts?
I hate young voters. No, I'm just kidding. It does seem, one thing I appreciate is taking a political message of progressivism and trying to adapt it a bit more for what's realistic in a given district. One of the frustrating things that we ran into when we were doing runoff campaigning for Ossoff and Warnock, the 2 senators in Georgia, was because it was a national race, there was a lot of national attention from very, very, very progressive people who I'll say had the best intentions in mind, but were incredibly critical of those 2 senators for the beliefs they held, because they're like, these guys aren't progressives at all. And it's like, okay, these guys are running for the Senate in Georgia. Okay,
You got to pick your battles here.
yeah,
guys.
these are Democrat votes.
West
These
Virginia.
are really important. Yeah, I understand that they might not be, what you want to see from a senator from, from California or New York or something, but like these are important seats. And yeah, it seems like, I guess to Hutch's question, sometimes it can be difficult to adopt radical platform that might exist on the national level in some idea and then make it applicable to a local level where people are just like, well, I don't understand why we don't have our version of of AOC or some very far left, or like, where's our Bernie Sanders or whatever. And there's this issue with these independent political movements sometimes, you can see it in the Green Party, where they show up every 4 years for their presidential elections to collect their payout and then they just disappear. Mm-hmm. And so I appreciate trying to adopt it more on a local level and then trying to fight for local seats to like proof of concept. Like, I can show you that we can do something here. You mentioned the state legislatures in Michigan and these other states that are building on ideas with just a couple votes. I think that's a good approach.
Well, I have an interesting story for you then.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2022, my organization, there was some incredible organizers in the area that did a lot of work on it. I just showed up and knocked on some doors and talked to some people. The foundation had already been laid, but they posed a question to the county board in Dunn County, Wisconsin. Now, this is rural, ruby red, conservative, Christian Wisconsin, right on the border of Wisconsin and Minnesota. And they had a problem that their employee health insurance for county employees was a massive black hole in the budget. What do we do about it? One of the board of supervisors happened to be an employee of ours. He's an incredible organizer. And he was like, oh gosh darn it, if only we had a national not-for-profit health insurance program or something along those lines. So it went to the board of supervisors. The incredibly mega chair was like, all right, whatever, we can put it to the vote. Now, Wisconsin has non-binding ballot referendum, so it didn't matter. It was more, like you said, a test of whether or not this idea would be palatable to the people in the community. Went to the ballot, and it passed, 51-49. Now, again, that does not mean it was implemented, but we phrased the question as, should Congress and the President of the United States enact into law a national not-for-profit health insurance program? Well, what does that sound like? It's Medicare for all, right? But you can't say that because it's a buzzword, it's a trigger word. Socialism, that automatically people hear it and they reject it. They reject the premise, they reject the possibility of it.
It's like polling on the ACA versus Obamacare.
Bingo. Yeah. Exact same concept. And then, so I was able to go back. Now, Republican officials, they don't give a damn. But I was able to go back to Governor Tony Evers then and say, Governor, we did all we could to help you. We got you reelected. Great job. But just to let you know, as the victorious incumbent Democratic governor, this unapologetically progressive policy outperformed you by 15 points in a very red, very conservative, very rural district. So at the end of the day, it is about the message itself, and if you are able to properly form that message in a way that the voter can easily digest and won't immediately reject because of any of their preconceived notions or whatever they've been, whatever propaganda they've been taking in leads them to believe. We can enact these policies starting at the ground level, build them up from there. You just got to be willing to put in the work.
Mm-hmm. You can't do that without victory, though. I mean, you can have these incredibly popular policies on paper. Like, I think paid family leave, I believe, polls at 80% nationally or something like that. We're obviously nowhere close to passing that at the national level.
I mean, cannabis legalization too.
Sure,
Some of these policies are extremely popular.
We could list a dozen of these such policies, and it's a reminder for me that none of these. I try not to pay too much attention to those public opinion polls because they're meaningless if you don't win elections.
Right. Exactly.
And we've discovered in the modern era, especially in the modern era, that the Republican Party do not care about popular policies. They're just trying to shrink government as much as possible in ways that suit them, and then inflate government as much as possible in ways that suit them as well.
They can also rewrite reality. One of my biggest triggers recently is, I don't know how this happened, but like Trump and the conservatives have like convinced themselves that they're the reason why we got rid of pre-existing conditions.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bro, you tried to actually assassinate that policy. Right. Like, McCain was the sole vote that like stopped you from totally destroying. And then you went to the Supreme Court after to even further. And now they're like, actually, we want to write this into even more law. We think it's the best idea ever. And of all the ACA's failures and of all the people complaining about, Lieberman blocked the public option and we didn't get single payer, blah, blah, the idea of that pre-existing conditions like clause was so life-changing to so many people.
Simply transformative.
Just that one itty-bitty thing, which is embarrassing we shouldn't even be talking about this early, because Europeans are listening. They're like, wait, why? What you mean? Because it's such an unbelievable thing that in the United States you might be a slave to your job for the rest of your life because you've got a condition now that if you leave your work, you're never going to get health insurance again. You're completely screwed. Just that one little thing was so transformative. But now the
I got to give a shout out to Wisconsin Senator Tammy Baldwin for the role that she played in that. She's up for re-election this year. So
in the ACA.
In the pre-existing conditions clause.
Oh right, yeah.
This event is canvassing for Tammy as well.
Yeah, the Senate seat is one of the big things we're fighting for here. So.
And you think about what's big for me and something that's done really well for me at Doors, even deeper than pre-existing conditions, is staying on your parents' insurance until you're 26.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Monumental.
Yes.
Absolutely monumental. And so many of these issues, because they're intertwined, the most obvious one to speak on is women's reproductive freedom. A lot of young men in particular don't think that's applicable to them. They don't see how it is because I think they just are ignorant to the fact that obviously they have mothers, many of them have sisters, cousins, friends, girlfriends, whatever it may or may not be. All of these issues come back to you if you look at it through the bodily autonomy lens. All of these issues come back to you if you look at it through a human rights perspective.
Yeah.
So many of these problems will impact every single one of us, whether we want to admit it or not.
Yeah.
And we need to get young people in particular, I think, to recognize that.
Kamala had a really good moment when she was serving in the Senate, and there was the public confirmation hearing for Kavanaugh.
Mm-hmm.
And one of her best moments that has since gone viral again since she's become the candidate is her asking Kavanaugh, "Are you aware of any laws dictating what men can do with their own bodies?"
Mm-hmm.
And he just fumbled through the answer. And but no, she's doing a lot of good work right now in terms of raising awareness of the issue. Like the fact that 1 out of 3 women in this country now live in a state that has effectively banned abortion, and now we're seeing actual mortalities as a result of this kind of thing. Can you sort of like talk to me a little bit about like the enthusiasm on this particular issue that you've observed in this state?
I mean, that is definitely the biggest issue that I've heard at the Doors.
For young people or broadly?
Broadly.
The abortion issue?
Is women's reproductive freedom in general.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of, IVF falls under this umbrella. The dangers of ectopic pregnancies. Like, there's a lot of things that young voters might not recognize, but from a broad perspective, yes. Women's reproductive care is definitely number one. Number two, and again, it's very similar, it's healthcare. It's the expansion of healthcare. It's the necessity, the belief that healthcare is a human right, that we shouldn't be profiting off of the misfortune and physical well-being of human beings, especially in the richest country in the history of our species. I find that grotesque, frankly. Another thing that's done really well for me at the Doors, and this isn't a talking point for some of the larger races, it's more me personally, just because of a deep-seated belief I have that money and its parasitic nature is antithetical to democracy at large. The concept of one person, one vote is defeated by, even in smaller races, the amount of large dollar donors that we get coming in. So I've taken the route of not doing aggressive mailers, phone calling, text banking, all that kind of stuff, because everybody's getting 10 million of them, right? You're going, the mailer's going right from your mailbox right into the garbage can.
Sure.
You don't bother to look at it. Instead, we're trying to go and knock as many doors as we possibly can, talk to as many people as possible, because a lot of these officials are insulated from that. They raise a whole boatload of money. They get access to your home through YouTube ads and
Sure.
television commercials and all that kind of stuff. They don't have to actually go and talk to their constituents. And if we want to change the game, we got to change the people who are sent in there. Unfortunately, you got to win by the rules as they're currently written. So it's a balancing act. But at the Doors, I think people are more upfront and honest and authentic with you if you present yourself as open and honest and authentic with them. The modern world, so much of the modern world is just curated. It's highly manufactured content, whether it's social media feeds, whether it's on television, wherever you're getting your information from. It's designed to sell you something, whether it's a product, an idea, anything. And if you can go to someone and say, no, this is who I am, I'm not wearing a mask, literally or metaphorically, present yourself as an honest human being who wants X, Y, and Z for their community because it's going to impact me through A, B, and C, I think there's a respect to that I've found a lot of, even conservative individuals at the Door are willing to at least give me the time of day then. And that's a great starting point.
Well, on the topic of healthcare, I think one thing that could be really helpful is if we could convince a lot of young people just how much of a success the ACA was. It wasn't, and that took time for that policy to become popular. It was passed in 2010. There were Democratic representatives and senators that voted for that bill, knowing that it would cost them their political careers. They did it anyways. Republicans then postured about getting rid of it until they finally had the opportunity to do so in 2017 when Trump was inaugurated. And it was only after the ACA was threatened that it actually gained majority approval in this country for the first time. And people understood, actually, wait a second, I am personally benefiting from this in ways that maybe I wasn't aware of before, I wasn't acknowledging before. And I hear a lot of complaints when it comes to young people that it wasn't Medicare for all, they didn't get the public option in there, et cetera, et cetera. If we can help to articulate and contextualize the significance of the ACA and the opportunities that it represents down the line in terms of building off of that, then I think maybe we can start to get young people excited again about like maybe taking care of this or doing something about healthcare down the line. I don't know if you've observed, like a lot of young people don't understand how big of a deal the ACA was.
Yeah, no, they most certainly don't, because they, perhaps they were born in 2002, 3, 4, 5, whatever. I'm a mid-'90s baby, so I was just starting to get involved in politics when all that, when the ACA was passed. And yes, I think the reason that the popularity went up when it was finally threatened was because people had to take a look in a mirror and basically say like, oh, wait a minute, what will I be going without now?
Right.
You never think of the benefit when you have it because it's almost like assumed it will be there. I'll compare it to, this is a dumb analogy, but people who play will recognize. I see myself doing this with fantasy football all the time. If I make the wrong start, you're always questioning like, oh crap, I left 15 points on my bench. If you make the right start, it's just assumed, oh, of course I made the right decision because that's what I do. And I think that can be applied to policy as well, in the fact that we often take for granted that which we didn't recognize was fought for and earned,
right,
until all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is on the chopping block.
Yeah.
Oh, and Roe v. Wade might be a great example of that as well. We never thought in a million years Republicans would actually do away with it. It was the dog chasing the car. They were just going to leverage it for fundraising opportunities, like, oh yeah, we're going to come and we're going to overturn Roe v. Wade, and then they did it. And now millions and millions and millions of women have less rights than their mothers and grandmothers did. It was unthinkable, but that's the world we face today.
Yeah.
And if we're able to kind of really hammer home the importance of the now, because the now lays the framework for the America of tomorrow,
Right.
hopefully we'll have more engagement and more inspiration, really, because so much of the modern world is driven by fear. And you can't win on fear. You need to win on hope.
Yeah, I think when we look back on massive shifts in this country, like suffrage, civil rights, abolition, especially when I was young, I would think of these things in terms of just like the year that it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was this spontaneous thing that just occurred.
Boom, overnight.
But in every single workers' rights, I mean, every major political, cultural, social change that we've seen in this country was a result of decades of
if not more,
and building off the people that came before you. And so I think we need to find a way to make incrementalism a little bit more appealing, because that is historically how we get stuff done in this country. And it shouldn't be a bad word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you can offer it through, I'll give credit where credit is due. The Biden administration has been phenomenal on labor.
Yeah.
Something that, obviously, as a Sanders delegate in 2020, we were frustrated. We were frustrated that we weren't getting more from the Biden administration that we thought was designed to earn the progressive votes. We were very loud and very clear that if the progressives don't turn out in force, if young people don't turn out in force, we're not going to be able to win. And when Joe Biden was elected, now he seems to have recognized that, and he's been very good on the labor front. A sitting president on a picket line is remarkable.
Right.
First time in U.S. history, I believe. But if you aren't offering that public pressure from the get-go, I think it can be hard to then expect it after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a firm believer in the inside-out strategy, that you need to utilize both external public pressure and internal support through like-minded individuals. The way we do that is winning both locally, up and down the ballot, and pushing more and more candidates that believe in this potential future, because you can't thrive tomorrow if you don't survive today. And a lot of young people are really struggling with that.
So no, I love to hear that approach. That mixture of internal and external is something that appeals to the way that I see politics. And a big reason, none of that could have happened if Biden didn't win. Mm-hmm. And then after he won, obviously, he invited the Warren wing into his cabinet, into his policy discussions. He invited Bernie into his policy discussions. And then we saw him go even to the left of what he had he had promised in 2020. So, for example, he was not running on forgiving student loan debt via executive authority when he was running. He wanted a bill from Congress, which was always going to be a long shot. And it was through his coalition building with the left flank of the party who helped him get over the finish line in 2020. They were then rewarded by him using executive authority to now forgive student loan debt for, I think, 4 to 5 million people, $150 billion. I mean, that's not nothing. That's like almost 10%.
Oh, that's massive.
It's
massive,
huge, yeah. So
when we talk about one of my biggest problems with the organized left is so often the left fractures over the most minute of differences. You could agree on 99% of things, but if you disagree on one thing, it's like, oh, that's a deal breaker, that's where I draw the line. Versus the right, because I think they recognize that they're the ideological minority at this point, they will latch onto one thing you agree on. Perhaps you disagree on 99% of things, but if you agree on 1% of things, it's like, oh wait, hey, we both like X, Y, and Z, or in this situation,
well, you say
like X.
You
like,
say
let's go
that
together.
You say that, but I think there was way more unity in the Republican Party 15, 20 years ago. Now the current state of the Republican Party is they ousted their own speaker. They had almost a historically bad midterm performance. We made Donald Trump the first one-term president since 1992. They're not doing so hot. Like, it used to be kind of like a trope that, the right is always super united.
Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line type deal.
But it's been sort of the opposite for the last 6 years. I've never seen the Democratic Party, I'm 41, so I've never seen the Democratic Party in my life be more unified, cohesive, focused than they are right now. And I've never seen the Republican Party this scattered, fractured, disorganized, ineffective. I mean, I don't know if you have any other thoughts to share on this as well.
I'm sorry, I'm messing with you.
I feel like there's like a first order, second order, third order thing that happens where what you're talking about is that Democrats tend to be more exclusionary on things and Republicans tend to be more inclusionary. I actually think both function the exact same way, but they appear to be different because the things that they're selecting for are actually of a different type of thing. So, for instance, when we look as Democrats to the Republicans, we go, how is it that they're able to get over all of these different things so much easier than we are? They've got different policy positions between the party, like Donald Trump. Donald Trump truly isn't even really a strong, or at least when it came to office, he wasn't like a strong conservative in terms of what neocons and everybody at the time like represented, you know? Yeah. But somehow they were all able to get over that. And then on the left, we fight, we kill ourselves over 15 versus 12 an hour minimum wage, public option versus Medicare for all, what should our foreign policy look like? But I think what's actually happening is on the left, there is debate over these types of policy things. On the right, the thing that they've chosen is Donald Trump. And at the end of the day, that is the thing they're selecting for. And they will excise you from that movement and burn your political career to the ground if you part on that. So it's not that they have a larger tent that they can include people with different beliefs. It's that the beliefs that they're actually selecting for aren't policy ones. It's allegiance to Donald Trump. If you want to be like pro-abortion or pro whatever else, that's fine, as long as you're lockstep with Donald Trump. But you can be lockstep in every policy position and just not like Donald Trump, and that's enough to get you completely cut out of the party, which is insane.
Yeah, cult of personality around Trump. Yeah.
But it's just a cult. It's just a cult. Yes, but yeah, it is. It's that's why you get these people like the losing Speaker of the House and not being able to pass a border bill and not being able to stand in opposition to literally anything Trump says. It's because, once you stand against Trump, your whole political career is going to be burned to the ground from the conservative side of things. It's insane. Yeah.
And it depends on the community, too. So, like the local races around me, we had my opponent, who was not endorsed by Donald Trump, and some of the more conservative individuals in my community label a rhino, which is hilarious when you look at his record. Right. And then you have the candidate who was endorsed by Donald Trump, who got whooped in the primary.
Which happened to a lot, but somehow Donald Trump he's got this effect of shamelessness, of lack of accountability, to where even though he can back people that lose at elections over and over and over again, he still is.
It's not his fault. It was her fault. She did something wrong. She didn't follow the Trump playbook properly or whatever.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of those types of people. Because 2022 was not what they thought it would be. And even in some of your Roy Moore was a special election, right? Yeah, and even in some of your special elections where Trump-backed candidates were not performing very well. Yeah, I don't know how he's able to elude. This is why I thought in 2020, I'm like, okay, that's it. We're not going to see Trump again, because you can't run the same candidate. I guess the guy that he just lost against, but they did anyway. I don't know. I don't know any other candidate that could ever get away with that, even with a totally different vice president. Yeah, because he tried to kill the last one. Yeah, I don't know. That's crazy to me.
He's been an unmitigated disaster for the Republican Party. Yeah. And yet somehow Trump and his movement have convinced not only Republicans but a lot of people on the left that he's this like strong force. Like I see him now as very weakened.
He's a loser.
He's
the
just
people he backs are a loser. Republicans also, and this is something that is going to be very hard for them to overcome. Republicans have enjoyed. I call it, because I think it's a good term.
DEI.
Yes, Republican DEI.
Yeah.
They get a lot of boost because of the systemic organization of civics in the United States. The fact that the Senate favors a state instead of a population, that's a huge institutional advantage for Republicans. The fact that the Electoral College dishes out electoral votes based on your Senate seats and your House, and the House isn't even truly proportional. It still over-selects for smaller states. So Republicans enjoy all of this systemic advantage, and they're still losing their presidential elections. When they start to lose, they're like fucked, because you're already like the popular vote is like way in the rearview mirror. They don't even pretend to try to be. This is why, I don't know if you see this in real life, but online you talk to them, it's like, you guys know that like you get spanked in the popular vote all the time, right? Like, well, we live
haven't won the popular vote since, I want to say,
2004.
Was it Bush's second run?
Might have been, yeah. But they'll say, well, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. I'm like, okay, I don't know what that has to do with anything.
And
so,
I don't have a golden retriever, I have a dog. Like, you make
so
the same...
stupid. So if they start to lose, like, even if they get to this point where they're losing even with all these systemic advantages, man, like, you can only gerrymander so hard, you can only control so much on the systemic level. Yeah.
We're in that moment now, though.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Once Texas flips, the Electoral College will be done overnight. Now, I don't know how close.
I made that joke. The joke was if Republicans would ever win a popular vote and lose the Electoral College, in one microsecond, the Electoral College would be going faster than they could even certify the vote. They'd be like, we got to redo the election.
We joke about Rome not being built in a day, but in that
it would
scenario,
be one day.
It would be less
gone.
than a day. Yeah. They would flip it overnight. And it's interesting too. So you talk about gerrymandering, which is something very important to the people of Wisconsin. I don't know if you followed our big Supreme Court race last year. Janet Protasewicz defeated Dan Kelly by over 11 points.
And you guys flipped it, right?
10.
You guys flipped it to a majority liberal, right?
Yep, and 2 or 3 points in Wisconsin is a Wisconsin landslide. A 10-point victory.
That's a big victory.
Taking them out back and just beating them to a pulp.
When was this race? Last year?
2023, last year, yeah.
So it's a post-Dobbs then, yeah.
$50 million was spent on this Supreme Court race. Yeah. Unfathomable amounts of money. But we won the seat, and now we have new maps in Wisconsin for the first time in over a decade. Famously, some of the most gerrymandered in the entire country. I believe we had a 3% score from Harvard's, the fairness of maps score that they give out. Wisconsin was widely regarded as having been the worst in the country. And while these maps are better, I don't want to say they're fair, they are better. That is why Wisconsin has become so important from an assembly and from a state senate perspective, because without the new maps, we would not have a chance to do anything here. They were found unconstitutional for a number of reasons. Surprise, surprise, conservatives and passing maps that don't fit the constitutionality argument that they love to make. And now we have places like, this isn't really related to the maps, but Ozaukee County, famously one of the WOW counties I mentioned earlier, we had an August 13th ballot referendum. Now, this was binding because it was put forth by the legislature after having passed twice in consecutive sessions, and it was 50-50 in Ozaukee County. If you had told someone in Wisconsin that was politically engaged 10 years ago, 5 years ago, that Ozaukee County would be 50-50, they would assume the Republican Party has ceased to exist. There's no other explanation for how a place that was 70-30 as recently as 10 to 15 years ago was all of a sudden at 50-50. That's monumental.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've seen tremendous amount of movement towards the Democratic Party, particularly in the last 2.5 years. You've just seen in race after race and special election after special election, not just in one particular region of the country, all over the country. Mm-hmm. Democrats are overperforming in their poll averages consistently across the board, which is why I feel pretty bullish about November. I mean, I feel like we definitely have a lot of work to do and we shouldn't get complacent. I really love that Kamala is going out there and just telling people that we're the underdogs, but I like to tell my stream, no, I think we got this. I just feel like the momentum has just been in our favor for the last 2.5 years now, and so I hope that translates to a massive amount of success for you guys at the state level.
Well, that was a great caveat to add as well, because I love to phrase it that way as well. In a vacuum, I think we're doing really well right now. However, Politics changes on the daily. You have to be putting in the work in every day. Do not get complacent. Make sure you're going out and knocking as many doors as you can, talking to as many people as you can. You're a trusted messenger to the people in your circle in a way that candidates just can't be, whether it's via social media ads or mailers or however you're getting our information. That's just, again, back to the authenticity argument. That's just not authentic. It's not real. And if we continue putting in the work, I feel we're in a pretty good position, but that means you cannot get complacent. You need to be going out here every single day. You need to be putting in the work in, knocking doors every weekend. Canvassing is 7 to 10% more effective than any other means of voter outreach. That starts here, and it starts now with 1 month to go. I'm curious what you guys think, because this is something now that I've been called chronically online in the past, so I feel I'm probably
you're
amongst friends.
Yeah.
A lot of the recent conversation that we've been seeing from the Democratic Party at the national level, and particularly from messaging from the Harris administration, we saw Liz Cheney coming and speaking with Kamala yesterday in Ripon, Wisconsin, famously the birthplace of the Republican Party. I'm a little worried, I'm actually a lot worried, that this effort to essentially redo what Obama did in 2012 and then Clinton tried to do in 2016, where we pull these moderate Republicans back into the Democratic Party, pull them back under our umbrella, is going to alienate more of the progressives that otherwise would have came out for sure.
You want to take this one?
Because I have my thoughts, but I'd like to know what you guys think.
I think that these elections, your goal in your election is to turn out your base or to attack the other person. It's never to pull voters from the other person, because it's just not happening.
Mm-hmm.
It might be possible that by showing endorsements maybe for these people, maybe there are some Republican... I don't even believe that,
Who's the Liz... Liz
Yeah, no, that's what I say. I saw myself quite finished. I don't actually believe that. I have a lot of respect for Republicans that decided to be principled. Liz Cheney was a big part of the J6 Commission. I have a lot of respect for her.
I agree.
But, there's not I don't know which Republicans that haven't already made up their mind about not voting for Trump are seeing, was it Cheney's endorsement of Kamala Harris, or Liz Cheney's thing with Kamala Harris, this is what I needed actually. Now I'm going to make the jump.
It's Nikki Haley primary voters.
But are those guys voting for Trump?
No, they possibly.
The Haley for Trump voters already came out and endorsed Kamala
right.
a few weeks ago or something. That was a while. Yeah.
Somebody put it to me this way, and it's Liz Cheney would have endorsed Nikki Haley were she the nominee. Liz Cheney is not endorsing Kamala because she likes the idea of $50,000 tax write-off for small business, or expansion of the child tax credit, or expanding ACA subsidies. She's endorsing Kamala Harris because she thinks Donald Trump is fucking crazy. Which
she hates Trump. Yeah,
it's true.
She just straight up hates Trump.
I'm not overly concerned about this because I don't see Kamala adopting full-on Republican positions so far. Now, if she was targeting Liz Cheney supporters or former Dick Cheney voters with policy promises, then I would be concerned. But she's just purely targeting, I think, and it's not an insignificant portion of the Republican electorate. We're talking 20-30% of Republican primary voters in states all over the country were voting for Nikki Haley 2 months after she dropped out of the race. Mm-hmm. So clearly there is an appetite of people like Connor over here, former Republican voters that are really disturbed to see what Trump has done with the party. And so if Kamala can tout that endorsement and peel off even just 5% of them when the margins are this close.
Or get them to not vote, too. Remember,
Sure.
That's also an option, too, yeah. Just make them not vote, yeah.
Yeah, my concern, I think getting them to stay home, that is very valid and very legitimate and something we should be shooting for and is very possible. My concern is that, if we do swing 5% of those people to flip and then let's say 3% more stay home, I don't know if that's going to overcome the, I think, significant amount of individuals who, progressive and or further left, let's call them, who want to believe in the potential of a Harris administration, but can't do it because they're not seeing any of the other demands having been made. Wisconsin and Michigan I'll speak to specifically because of how successful the uninstructed program, or the uninstructed movement was here. Mm-hmm. That's a large chunk of the electorate. 48,000 people in Wisconsin voted uninstructed. And the message at that time was to be very clear to the Biden administration that we don't want any more violence in the Middle East.
I think the issue is that policy position is not changing, and if it did, you would lose so many older voters that support Israel just because of the history or whatever in the United States between that and Israel. So that's it's a non-negotiable position for any party that I think wants to win.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it's probably not worth trying to appeal to those voters.
That's the tough
think
balance.
that's it,
Biden
yeah.
won Wisconsin by 22,000. You know, let's say hypothetically all 48,000 uninstructed voters stayed home.
Mhm.
That's costing him the state. Now, for a lot of the uninstructed voters, this was meant to be the red flag, the canary in the coal mine, saying, you know, hello, hello, hello. If you don't change your stance on this, you are going to lose. This is an uncontested primary. You've already won. So this is the safe time, if you will, to make that point. I know a lot of progressives that have told me straight up, I'm voting third party, or I'm staying home, or I'm voting for everything other than the presidential election.
Right.
And there's nothing I can do or say to them otherwise, because I've made my stance from the get-go very, very obvious.
That's fine, but also not to be mean, or I will be mean actually, because fuck it, I don't care. Like, if you do that, and let's say, for instance, so right now in the election, for the presidential election, you have two realistic options. You
Yes.
have two options. It's either Kamala or it's Trump. One of these candidates is clearly better for the Middle East than the other if you are pro-Palestinian, right? Regardless of if you think that the Democrats aren't doing a good enough job or aren't pushing back against Israel enough, Trump has said multiple times that he is a massive Israel simp. He
He's
will be.
cataclysmic to the Middle
Yes,
East,
he
literally
is
and
like the most
metaphorically.
important alliance. Like, you saw his behavior towards Israel and the Middle East when he was the president, and it was just unabashed, like full-throated support for Israel with absolutely no criticism whatsoever. So, what are you even accomplishing by withholding your vote? Like, I see two potential catastrophic outcomes for progressives. The first is you manage to make a difference in the election, and Trump wins. Okay, he's never going to be sympathetic towards Palestinians.
And the Democrats will never try to win your vote over
That's
again.
That's the second
They
outcome.
know.
The second outcome
Yes.
is if Democrats win and they didn't need it, oof. Now you're like, Russia cut off from the Western world. It's like, okay, well, we don't have to worry about anything anymore.
And
Like,
if we
we're just
thought
gonna-
they were ignoring us in the past,
Yeah, now they're super
why would they
ignoring you. Yeah.
capitulate to demands today?
If
Yeah.
you're a Democratic strategist and you're looking for gettable votes, and you see, and it's not to say that I'm not sympathetic to somebody who really cares a lot about this issue, because there's a lot of it that is harrowing.
It's a huge issue.
It's visceral.
If there's one thing I've learned, the campaign motto. So my campaign motto is serving the will of the many rather than or serving the needs of the many rather than the will of the few, because my whole worldview is built on this collective strength being greater than individual ability.
Yeah.
But the one thing I've learned campaigning is two things can be true at the same time. And so much of the modern world, we're told that it's an either or. It's a good versus evil. It's a Disney movie where there's like an inherent right and an inherent wrong no matter what you do. Every issue on Earth is on a spectrum, one way or another. It falls somewhere in that gray zone. And for individuals who are saying that genocide is a line in the sand, I could not agree more that conceptually what they're saying is accurate. At the same time, what you said, we have two options, realistically. And I have people telling me like, well, if everybody voted for Jill Stein, she could win. Okay, go get 81 million people to do that. Like,
Or a single seat anywhere in the
or a single seat anywhere, right? And I love what the Green Party stands for, because I agree with a lot of their policies, but I don't like the way that they have gone about it, because we do live in a two-party system.
Jill Stein just this last week talked about potentially pardoning January 6 people.
I saw that, and
You know.
that's
Which is tricky.
it's very problematic.
Problematic is a
very,
word,
very
yeah.
problematic.
And
I'm not
blame
going to.
Jill Stein for that. I mean, I'm sure that whoever her handler is
got
in
it
Moscow is. I'm just kidding.
Sure.
I'm sorry. I'm not kidding. I think that one of the things that also irritates me with that type of talk is the people will say things that I don't know if they've ever thought about them before. They don't even believe. They'll say things like, "Oh, well, I can't vote for the lesser of two evils." So one, it's stupid because no politician is going to fully align with you.
Mm-hmm.
But then two, even if I take you at face value, shouldn't you? Like, let's say, for instance, I have the
Are
option
you
to
doing the morally correct
Yeah, I
thing
can
by-
vote for
yeah.
two people, and one guy wants to murder like 10 innocent people, and the other guy wants to murder 100 innocent people. And realistically, one of these guys is going to win. It sucks, but like I'm probably voting for the guy that's going to murder 10 innocent people.
But also, you can frame any and every single
Yes,
race
will always
as
be the lesser of two
was the
evils.
lesser of
Yeah.
two evils.
This guy wants to do single-payer healthcare, and this other guy just wants a public option.
Right.
And it's like, well, what I actually want is for all healthcare to be completely free, period. So even single-payer is not enough. So I'm not voting for the lesser of two evils. Like,
Exactly,
That's,
yeah.
And then are you going to apply that on the spectrum, like you said, to every single political
Every issue
issue?
across
Like, come
the
on,
board.
this is so
Yeah.
stupid.
Two things can be true at the same time, right? Technically, you're correct that voting for the lesser of two evils is still voting for evil. However, these are people's lives on the line, and when you're treating this as a purely hypothetical, like, it's not fair to the people who are going to suffer because you are trying to take the moral high ground, even if the moral high ground you are taking is the more just decision to make. Like, we don't live in a video game as much as I would love to. Again, I'm amongst friends here. I've spent way too much time the past few years. It's a nice getaway, but this is not, the hypothetical trolley problem. These are where we can sit and debate the philosophical merits of whether this line shouldn't or should not be crossed. Though it's a fair conversation to have, I don't think it's applicable in an electoral system that really only has two options. We are choosing between potential cataclysm, the end of democracy as we know it, and a Harris administration that has the opportunity to be better than perhaps we're accustomed to. We are never going to get everything that we want out of any politician. That's just not possible. But do you believe in the spirit of America and what we can be or what we will be going forward, or do you believe the American experiment should cease to exist? And if you're able to wrap your head around that idea, because Trump has been very clear with what he wants to do here.
Yeah.
He has made no efforts to hide his long-term goals. If we're able to recognize that, which is why I've been saying from the beginning, the same argument that I made in 2020, in fact, that Trump ends democracy immediately, he is catastrophic for both today, tomorrow, and the future. A Harris administration, just like a Biden administration was, even to progressives, buys you 4 more years to organize at the ground level.
And you get good policy.
You will see improvements
Yes.
compared to what we're expecting. You will get good policy compared to what we have seen from corporate neoliberal America. But we are really just trying to make sure that we have a progressive potential for a better tomorrow.
I also appreciate that, like, even though they're very progressive, I have heard a lot of progressives. I think I've heard Anna and Cenk both say it, that like people have been surprised that Biden did a lot better than I think a lot of people, even as like a moderate leftist, I guess, compared to like progressives. I was shocked at how much Biden was able to get done.
You could argue he's been the most progressive president of the last half century.
You should argue.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a very fair. I would probably agree with that. Yeah,
Yes,
I think that's a very fair argument to make. And I think a lot of young people, like we've been talking about, don't understand that you can't get everything that you want immediately. I would love to be able to sit here and say, no, we are not accepting any official that doesn't align with our platform categorically. And if they don't, we're not going to bother working for them because, again, then we're just setting ourselves up for failure.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting the signal, William. So appreciate you coming on. It's really nice to meet you.
It was nice to meet you guys.
Good luck with your race.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you so much. And hey, keep up the great work. We, the left, we got a lot of work to do, but the seed has been planted. The progress is there to be made. Young people are ready to get engaged and involved. Don't give up on us.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Take care.